Chosen one, if you have found your way to this moment, pause. Something within you may have already begun to shift. Not loudly, not in a way others could easily notice, but quietly, almost gently. It feels like a subtle pull, a movement beneath the surface of your thoughts, as if something deep inside is waking up after a long silence. You may not fully understand it, and that's okay. Awakening rarely begins with clarity. It begins with a feeling. Lately, you might have noticed small changes, a different awareness, a sense that you are no longer reacting to the world the same way you once did. Things that used to matter deeply may feel distant now, while moments of stillness seem to carry a strange kind of weight. It's not confusion, it's transition. There is a quiet realization forming within you that you are not meant to remain the same. Not because something is wrong, but because something is evolving. You may feel it most when you are alone, when the noise fades and your inner world becomes impossible to ignore. In those moments, something speaks without words. And even if you try to dismiss it, it returns. That feeling is not random. It is not imagination. It is the beginning of a deeper awareness unfolding inside you. You don't need to force understanding. You don't need to rush ahead. Just notice it. Stay with it, because what is happening within you right now is quiet, but it is real. There is a moment in every awakening that cannot be explained, only noticed, and for many, it begins in the eyes, not in the way stories often describe. There is no sudden glow, no dramatic transformation that others can easily point out. If anything, the change is almost invisible, yet strangely undeniable. It is something you feel before you ever try to understand it. You may have caught it yourself, a quiet difference when you look into the mirror, not in your appearance, but in the way your gaze rests. Deeper, steadier, less reactive. As if your eyes are no longer searching the world the way they used to, but instead observing it from somewhere further within. And others may notice it too, even if they cannot explain why. There are moments when your eyes meet someone else's, and something shifts in the space between you. A stillness appears. Conversations pause for a fraction longer than usual. People may look away more quickly, or hold your gaze with an unusual intensity, as if they feel seen in a way they are not used to. It is not about confidence. It is not about emotion. It is not even about intention. It is something else. Your eyes are beginning to carry presence. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that naturally holds it. A quiet force that does not try to be powerful, yet cannot be ignored. When you look at someone now, it may feel as though you are not just seeing their face, but sensing something beneath it, something unspoken, something real. And this is where the shift becomes clear. Because what is changing is not your physical sight, it is your perception. Your eyes are no longer just processing light and form, they are beginning to reflect awareness. They are becoming an extension of something deeper within you, your intuition, your clarity, your inner stillness. What others feel in your gaze is not something you are doing, it is something you are becoming. That is why it feels different. That is why it cannot be faked. And that is why, once this change begins, it does not go unnoticed, even in silence. Because the eyes no longer just look, they reveal. There comes a quiet stage in your awakening where the change begins to reach beyond your thoughts and into the way you actually see the world. It does not happen all the time. It does not overwhelm you. In fact, it is so subtle that you may question it the very moment it occurs. You might be sitting in stillness, your mind calm, your body relaxed, when suddenly, for just a brief second, something in your vision shifts. The edges of objects, like a wall, a doorway, or a piece of furniture, seem to ripple slightly. Not enough to distort reality, but enough to make you pause. Then, it's gone. Everything looks normal again. At first, you may think it's your eyes adjusting, or maybe just a moment of fatigue. You blink, you refocus, you try to recreate it, but nothing happens. And yet, something inside you knows that what you experienced was different, because it didn't feel like strain. It didn't feel like confusion. It didn't feel like something was wrong. If anything, it happened in a moment of clarity. This is what makes the experience so important, because what you are witnessing is not a problem with your vision, it is a subtle shift in your perception. For most of your life, your awareness has been trained to see the world as stable, solid, and fixed. Your senses filter reality into something predictable, something easy to understand. But as your awakening deepens, that filter begins to soften. Not completely, not in a way that disrupts you, but just enough to reveal that reality is not as rigid as it seems. From a spiritual perspective, these brief ripples are moments where your consciousness slightly expands beyond its usual limits. Your awareness touches a deeper layer of reality, one that is more fluid, more alive, and for a second, your vision reflects that shift. The ripple is not in the object, it is in the way you are perceiving it. And that is why it only appears when you are calm, present, and open. It is not triggered by stress or imbalance. It emerges from stillness. That is also why it is important to understand this clearly. This is not a disease. This is not damage to your eyes. This is not something breaking down inside you. If it were, it would bring discomfort, confusion, or instability. But instead, these moments come and go gently, leaving behind a sense of awareness rather than fear. What is happening is not deterioration, it is expansion. Your perception is beginning to move beyond surface-level seeing. You are not just looking at the world anymore, you are starting to sense through it. And while these moments may be brief, they carry meaning. They are not there to confuse you, but to show you that your awareness is evolving quietly, naturally, and in its own time. There comes a point in your awakening where your eyes no longer function the way they once did, not physically, but energetically. Something shifts so deeply within you that your gaze begins to respond to truth and falsehood in ways your mind cannot control. You don't decide it, you don't analyze it. It simply happens. You may notice it the next time you look into someone's eyes. At first, everything seems normal. You listen, you observe, you engage. But then, something beneath the surface begins to feel off. Not in a dramatic or emotional way, but in a quiet, unmistakable sense that what is being presented is not fully real. And your body reacts before your thoughts can catch up. Your eyes may soften and pull away, as if they refuse to stay connected. Or they may sharpen, becoming intensely focused, almost as if they are looking straight through the person rather than at them. There is no middle ground anymore. This is the shift. Because your eyes are no longer participating in surface-level interaction, they have become sensitive to authenticity itself. Before this awakening, you could maintain eye contact out of politeness. You could ignore subtle discomfort. You could engage in conversations that felt slightly misaligned without fully understanding why. Your mind would rationalize it. Your behavior would adapt. But now, something has changed. The moment you encounter dishonesty, whether it is spoken, hidden, or even unconscious, your system recognizes it instantly, not as a thought, but as a sensation, a pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in your temples, a quiet resistance that rises from within. It is not fear, it is not judgment, it is recognition. Your body is no longer willing to ignore what your awareness can now detect. And this is why eye contact becomes different. You may find that you cannot hold a gaze with someone who is not being genuine, not because you are uncomfortable with them, but because your energy no longer aligns with what is being projected. Your eyes reject the illusion before your mind has time to explain it. At the same time, when you meet someone who is authentic, something entirely different happens. Your gaze becomes steady, calm, effortless. There is no tension, no need to analyze, no internal resistance. It feels natural, grounded, almost peaceful. Time seems to slow slightly, and the connection feels real, not forced, not performed. This contrast becomes undeniable. Your eyes begin to function like a filter, not of appearance, but of truth. They naturally move toward what is real and withdraw from what is not. And the more your awakening deepens, the stronger this response becomes. What makes this transformation so powerful is that it is not something you can control or turn off. You cannot pretend not to notice. You cannot force yourself to engage the way you used to. You cannot return to unconscious interaction because your awareness has crossed a threshold, and others can feel it. Some people will struggle to meet your gaze. They may look away quickly, become uneasy, or shift their behavior without understanding why. It is not because you are doing anything outwardly intense. It is because your presence exposes what is usually hidden. Your eyes no longer allow masks to remain untouched. For those who are not aligned with truth, this can feel uncomfortable, even confronting. For those who are genuine, it feels safe, even grounding. And this is where your gaze becomes more than just perception. It becomes a boundary, a quiet, unspoken line that separates what is real from what is not. A form of protection that does not require effort, explanation, or defense. It simply exists. You are not trying to read people. You are not trying to judge them. You are simply seeing. And in that seeing, your eyes have become something they were never meant to be. In an unconscious state, a direct extension of truth itself. This is why the change feels so intense. Because it is not about vision, it is about alignment. Your inner state is now reflected outward through your gaze, and anything that does not match that alignment becomes immediately visible. Not as a label, not as a conclusion, but as a felt experience your body cannot ignore. And once this level of perception awakens, it does not go away. It refines, it deepens. It becomes part of how you move through the world. Your eyes no longer search for approval. They no longer adapt to illusion. They no longer look away from what is real. They recognize, and in that recognition, they hold a quiet power, one that does not need to be expressed, because it is already felt. As your awakening continues to unfold, your perception begins to extend beyond what you directly look at, into what you quietly sense around you. At first, it may feel subtle. Your central vision remains calm and focused, but your peripheral awareness, the space just outside your direct gaze, starts to feel more active, more responsive. You may begin to notice small movements or faint shifts at the edges of your vision. A flicker, a shadow, something that disappears the moment you turn to look directly at it. But this change is not only visual, it is energetic. You might find yourself becoming aware of people without seeing or hearing them clearly. You could be sitting quietly and suddenly feel that someone has entered the space behind you, and when you turn, your awareness is confirmed. It happens too precisely, too often, to be coincidence. This is where your perception begins to transform. Your senses are no longer limited to processing physical input. They are becoming part of a wider field of awareness, something that feels like an internal radar, constantly and quietly scanning your surroundings. But unlike fear-based alertness, this does not come from tension. It comes from stillness. You are not searching, you are not reacting, you are simply aware. And in that awareness, your system begins to pick up on subtle signals that were once ignored, shifts in energy, emotional undercurrents, the presence of attention. You may start to feel when someone is observing you, even from a distance. You may sense when a space carries tension, or when it feels calm and open, without needing any visible explanation. This is the connection between emotion and environment becoming clear. You begin to realize that what you feel is not separate from where you are. Your inner state and your surroundings are constantly interacting. Certain places may suddenly feel heavy or draining, while others feel light and peaceful. Certain people may bring a sense of ease, while others create subtle discomfort, even without words. And your peripheral awareness becomes the bridge between these experiences. It does not rely on logic. It does not wait for proof. It responds instantly. At first, you may question it. You may try to explain it away. But over time, a pattern emerges. Your perceptions are consistent. Your feelings align with what later becomes clear. And slowly, you begin to trust this sensitivity. Your eyes are no longer just tools for seeing. They are part of a deeper system of perception, one that listens, feels, and responds to the world around you in real time. This is not something you need to control. It develops naturally as your awareness deepens. And as it grows, you begin to move through the world differently, not just observing what is in front of you, but sensing what surrounds you, guided by a quiet, steady knowing that does not need explanation to be real. There is another change that often goes unnoticed during awakening, yet it carries a quiet depth that affects both you and the people around you, the rhythm of your blinking. At first, it may seem insignificant. You are not consciously trying to change anything. You are not controlling your eyes. But in moments of stillness, something begins to shift. Your blinking slows down, naturally, effortlessly, without intention. You may notice it when you are fully present, when you are listening deeply, when you are sitting in silence, when your thoughts are no longer rushing ahead. Your eyes remain open a little longer than they used to, not out of tension, but out of calm. There is no strain, no discomfort, just a quiet steadiness, as if your gaze is resting instead of reacting. This change is directly connected to your state of awareness. Before awakening, your blinking was influenced by unconscious patterns, stress, distraction, social cues, the constant need to scan and respond. Your nervous system was always adjusting, always resetting. But now, something has settled. Your body is no longer bracing in the same way. Your mind is no longer pulling your attention in multiple directions. And as a result, your visual system begins to follow this inner stillness. Your blinking slows because you are no longer in a state of urgency. And this creates a noticeable shift in your presence. When you look at someone, your gaze feels steady, grounded, almost unmoving. Not in an intense or uncomfortable way, but in a way that feels deeper, more present, as if you are truly there, not distracted, not performing, not reacting, and people feel this. Some may become slightly uneasy, not because you are doing anything wrong, but because your presence reflects something they are not used to: stillness, without effort. They may look away more quickly, shift their posture, or feel subtly exposed. Others, however, may feel calm around you. They may find it easier to open up, to relax, to speak more honestly, because your steady gaze does not demand anything, it simply holds space. This is the quiet power of a slowed blink. It is not about control. It is not about technique. It is a natural expression of alignment. Your eyes are no longer reacting to the world, they are resting within it. And in that stillness, your presence begins to communicate something words cannot, a sense of clarity, calm, and awareness that others can feel the moment they meet your gaze. As your awakening deepens, you may begin to notice a quiet but undeniable pull toward the natural world, not in the way you once experienced it, but in something far more subtle, almost magnetic. It is not simply that nature feels beautiful. It feels familiar. You might find your gaze lingering on things you never paid attention to before. The slow movement of water, the way leaves branch out from a single stem, the spiral patterns in shells, the curves of clouds, the rhythm of wind through trees. These moments do not demand your attention, yet they hold it effortlessly. And for a brief time, you cannot look away. It is not admiration, it is not curiosity, it is recognition. Something within you responds to these patterns, as if your awareness is quietly remembering something it has always known, but never consciously understood. The shapes, the movements, the repetition of form, They begin to feel meaningful in a way that goes beyond logic. This is where perception becomes more intuitive. You are not analyzing what you see, you are feeling it. There is a sense that these patterns are not random, that the flow of water, the structure of leaves, the spirals and waves that appear throughout nature carry a kind of silent order, a language that does not use words, yet communicates directly with your awareness. And your eyes become the point of connection. They are no longer searching for stimulation or distraction. Instead, they are drawn toward what resonates, toward what feels aligned, toward what reflects a deeper harmony that your mind cannot fully explain. In these moments, time may seem to slow slightly. Your breath softens, your gaze relaxes, your awareness expands. And without effort, you enter a state that feels almost meditative. This is not something you create. It happens when you allow yourself to be present enough to receive it. From a deeper perspective, this attraction to natural patterns can be understood as your awareness tuning itself to the underlying structure of life. The same forms repeat across different scales in water, in plants, in the movement of air, and your perception begins to recognize this continuity. What once seemed ordinary now feels layered with quiet meaning. You may not be able to explain why certain shapes or scenes affect you the way they do, but you feel it clearly, a sense of calm, of alignment, of something ancient and steady beneath the surface of everything. There is also a gentle, almost mystical quality to these experiences. Not overwhelming, not dramatic. Just a soft awareness that there is more present than what is immediately visible. You begin to sense that nature is not separate from you, but part of the same field you are learning to perceive. And when your gaze rests on these patterns, it is not just observing, it is connecting. This is why the experience feels so grounding. Because in recognizing these subtle codes within nature, you are also recognizing something within yourself, not intellectually, but quietly, intuitively. And the more you allow yourself to remain present in these moments, the more natural this connection becomes, until seeing is no longer just about looking outward, but about remembering the deeper order that has always been there, waiting to be noticed. There are moments in your awakening that feel unlike anything you have experienced before, moments where everything seems to pause, not outside of you, but within. It can happen in the middle of a thought. You may be speaking, reflecting, or simply observing something ordinary, when suddenly your awareness becomes still. Not distracted, not blank, just still. As if something inside you gently holds your attention in place. Your eyes remain open, but your focus shifts inward. Time does not stop, but it feels as though it slows just enough for something deeper to move through you. And then it happens. A realization appears, not as a thought you constructed, not as a conclusion you reasoned toward, but as something complete, already formed, arriving all at once. This is what many describe as an intuitive download. It does not feel like thinking, it feels like receiving. The insight comes with clarity, often beyond what you could have explained moments before. It may relate to your life, your past, a person, or even something abstract, but when it arrives, it carries a sense of certainty that logic alone cannot create. You don't question it. You recognize it. And what makes this experience so distinct is the pause that comes before it. That stillness is not empty. It is preparation. Your awareness temporarily quiets the surface activity of the mind, creating space for a deeper layer of understanding to emerge. It is as if your system shifts from processing to receiving, allowing information to rise from within rather than being built from outside. This is why the insight feels immediate and complete. It was not created in that moment. It was accessed. From a deeper perspective, this process reflects a change in how your perception operates. Before awakening, most of your understanding came from analysis, step by step, thinking, comparison, and reasoning. But now, Another pathway is opening, one that does not rely on effort, one that does not require time. Instead of moving linearly, your awareness begins to function holistically, taking in patterns, emotions, and subtle connections all at once, and presenting them as a single, clear realization. And your eyes often reflect this shift. In the moment of stillness, your gaze may feel slightly fixed, not from tension, but from inward focus. It is as if your attention is no longer directed outward, but gathered within. Then, once the insight arrives, your awareness expands again, and your gaze softens. The moment passes, but something inside you has changed. You understand something you didn't before, not gradually, instantly. At first, these experiences may feel surprising. You may wonder where the insight came from. You may try to trace it back to a thought, a memory, or a piece of information, but often you won't find a clear origin, and that is because it did not come from the surface level of your mind. It came from a deeper layer of awareness that is now becoming accessible to you. Over time, you begin to trust these moments, not blindly, but through experience. You see how often these insights align with truth, how they bring clarity instead of confusion, how they simplify what once felt complicated, and slowly, you stop resisting the pause. You allow it, because you begin to understand that the stillness is not interrupting your thinking. It is revealing something beyond it. This is the quiet intelligence of awakening, not loud, not forced, but precise, direct, and deeply connected to your inner state. And the more you remain present, the more natural this process becomes, until insight is no longer something you chase, but something that arrives exactly when you are still enough to receive it. As your awakening continues to deepen, one of the most surprising shifts you may begin to notice is the ability to sense when someone is looking at you, even before you physically see them. At first, it may feel like coincidence. You are sitting quietly, focused on your own thoughts, when suddenly you feel something subtle but clear. A gentle pressure, almost like a quiet signal touching your awareness. Without knowing why, you turn your head, and there it is. Someone is already looking at you. It happens again and again, too often to ignore. What makes this experience so unique is that it does not come from fear. It does not feel like anxiety or hyper-alertness. In fact, it often appears when you are calm, relaxed, and fully present. This is what separates it from paranoia. Paranoia is driven by tension, by imagined threats, by a mind trying to protect itself from something that may not even be there. It creates discomfort, unease, and confusion. But this feels precise, grounded, neutral. You are not imagining danger, you are sensing attention. And that is the key, because as your awareness expands, your perception is no longer limited to one direction. Your eyes are not just tools that look outward, they begin to participate in a two-way exchange of awareness. Before awakening, your visual system worked in a simple way. You looked at the world, and the world appeared in front of you. Everything was one-directional. You observed, and that was the end of it. But now, something changes. You begin to realize that attention itself carries energy. When someone looks at you, it is not just light reflecting off your body into their eyes. It is also a form of focus, a directed awareness that extends outward and makes contact with you in a subtle, almost invisible way. And your system begins to register that contact. This is what creates the sensation, not through logic, not through sight alone, but through awareness, meeting awareness. You may feel it as a light pressure on the side of your face, a slight shift in your peripheral awareness, a quiet pull that draws your attention in a specific direction, and when you respond to it, it aligns. You turn, and you meet their gaze. This is the emergence of bidirectional perception. Your eyes are no longer passive receivers of information. They are part of a larger field that both sends and receives awareness. You are not only looking at the world, you are also sensing how the world is looking at you. At first, this can feel unfamiliar. You may question it. You may test it, turning deliberately, wondering if it will happen again. And over time, you begin to notice a pattern. It is consistent, it is subtle, and it is often accurate. You start to trust it, not because you can prove it, but because your experience continues to confirm it. There is also a deeper layer to this sensitivity. You do not just sense that someone is looking at you, you begin to feel the quality of that attention. Whether it is neutral, curious, intense, or unsettled, your awareness picks up on it before your mind has time to interpret it. This is not about becoming reactive, it is about becoming aware. And that awareness brings a quiet confidence. You no longer feel caught off guard. You no longer feel disconnected from your surroundings. Instead, you feel integrated, as if your perception extends beyond your physical body into the space around you. This does not make you hyper-aware in a stressful way. It makes you grounded, because you are no longer relying only on what you can see directly. You are connected to a wider field of perception that supports you without effort. And perhaps the most important thing to understand is this: you are not becoming paranoid. You are becoming sensitive to something that was always there, the exchange of attention between people, but that you are only now beginning to consciously perceive. Your awareness is expanding beyond the limits of ordinary sight. Your eyes are no longer just observing, they are participating. And in that participation, you begin to experience the world differently, not as something separate from you, but as a dynamic field of connection, where seeing is no longer one-sided, but shared. There comes a moment in your awakening where everything you have been experiencing begins to make sense, not through explanation, but through recognition. You realize that nothing happening within you has been random, not the subtle shifts, not the changes in your perception, not the way your eyes have begun to feel different. All of it has been leading to this quiet transformation. And the most powerful part is this: you do not need to prove it to anyone. You do not need to explain why your gaze has changed. You do not need to justify what you feel or what you see. You do not need validation from those who cannot perceive what you now perceive. Because this kind of transformation was never meant to be understood externally. It is meant to be lived. Your eyes have become something more than they once were. They no longer search for approval. They no longer avoid discomfort. They no longer adjust themselves to fit into expectations. They see clearly, directly, quietly. They recognize truth without needing confirmation. They sense energy without needing explanation. They respond not from habit, but from alignment. And that is the true sign of awakening. It is not about gaining something new. It is about removing what once blocked your ability to see, what once kept you distracted, what once made you doubt your own perception. Now, that veil has begun to lift, and it is reflected in your gaze. People may not understand it. Some will feel it and step back. Some will feel it and become curious. Some will feel it and be drawn closer without knowing why. But regardless of how others respond, the truth remains the same. What has changed within you is real, and it cannot be reversed. Because once your awareness reaches this level of clarity, it does not return to unconsciousness. It refines, it deepens, it stabilizes over time, becoming a natural part of who you are. Your eyes are no longer just observing life. They are participating in it with presence. They carry a quiet certainty, not loud, not forceful, but unmistakable. A kind of still power that does not need to announce itself, because it is already felt. And this is where your journey shifts. You stop questioning whether something is happening. You begin trusting that it already has. You stop searching for signs. You realize you are the sign. So do not look away from this change. Do not shrink it. Do not doubt it. Let it be what it is. Because your awakening was never about becoming someone else. It was about seeing clearly enough, to finally become yourself. And now, that clarity lives in your eyes.